She was in a boathouse by a lake. Local anglers used it. Redpath. Briars, as he was then, was one of them.
You seem to have done very well. I am glad of that.
I found a knife in the boathouse. It turned out to be Redpath's. He said he'd lost it a year before the killing.
Did you kill Charlie Hillian?
No, I did not.
You said you found the knife, sir. Was it you that found the little girl?
Yes.
Does it look bad for me?
Yes.
As bad as last time?
Yes.
I didn't do it. Not then. Not now.
No.
Redpath, Briars, claimed he was at home with his daughter at the time of the killing. She was upstairs asleep. He never wavered from that. So, they had to let him go. No one else was ever held for the murder.
He went to the cottage at 2:30 in the afternoon. He wanted to know what Charlie was going to say about the Lapsley case. There was no one at home, so he returned the following morning.
And you believe that?
Yes.
Hillian's notes on the Lapsley case are missing. We've proved he was at the cottage. Now he comes up with another lie to cover himself.
You're wrong, Morse. Wrong.
I watched television till 2:30. Then I went into the kitchen and made myself some tea. And then... Oh, dear.
Just take your time, Mrs. Keelan.
That's right. Then the doorbell went, and it was the dry cleaners with Mr. Hillian's evening suit.
You were in the kitchen when the doorbell rang?
Yes.
Could we go through, Mrs. Keelan, to the kitchen?
I brought the suit in, hung it up, and then went on mixing these scones. I was still here when Mr. Hillian got back at 4. Then he went out to that dinner. He'd asked me to stay late to do his ironing.
Did Mr. Hillian have his key?
No, the doorbell rang. He knew I was here, you see.
Twice. She heard the bell ring twice. The dry cleaners and when Hillian came back in the afternoon. Not when Redpath says he rang.
Don't you envy blokes that work with their hands, sir?
Have you spoken to him?
Yeah. His name's Mitchell, from over on Fern Street.
I think it's time we had another chat with Redpath, don't you?
Well, he won't be saying much for a few days, Inspector. And I want him to have complete rest. He's sedated at the moment.
Of course.
He was very fortunate, you know. One more minute and he would have been dead.
Yes, thank you for what you've done, Doctor.
Quite a turn-up, sir.
Wasn't it?
I reckon it was guilt made him do it.
Come to gloat, Inspector. Come to see him broken at last. What a pity some PC plod denied you all complete victory.
If you're interested, Miss Redpath, the doctor expects your father to make a full recovery. Redpath. Can we call a truce and talk?
Do I have to?
It might help your father. Did your father tell you he was coming to Oxford?
No. We live separately. We see each other once or twice a week.
Did he mention Charles Hillian's book to you at all?
Never. But I can understand why it would concern him. For 5 years after Mary's murder, my father was persecuted, Inspector. He lost his job at the local library, and when he moved to London, it continued there. No sooner had he started a job, he'd be asked to leave. No reasons would ever be given. There'd be telephone calls. When he picked up the phone, no one answered. And then suddenly, it stopped. I had a bookstore by then, did very well, so we moved into the shop. But my father was always afraid that the persecution would start again, so we changed our name from Briars to Redpath. I've grown quite used to it.
But it's later today, so the chance will get on.
You and Mary Lapsley, you were friends?
Inseparable. Mary had no father, and I had no mother. She left when I was very young. So we had a lot in common. We used to wish our parents would marry, so we could be sisters. But her mother died when Mary was 5 years old.
What about Mary's father?
I never knew him. Inspector, my father did not kill Mary. He was at home with me at the time. I'd come down with some bug or other.
You were asleep upstairs?
Yes.
Well, thank you for talking to me, Miss Redpath.
Was I any help?
It's early days.
The other policeman at the hospital.
Chief Inspector Dawson?
That's Dawson?
Yeah.
How strange. Well, he doesn't think my father killed Hillian. Does he, Inspector?
No. No, he doesn't.
Sir, Superintendent Strange asked if you were dropping.
Now?
I think so, sir.
Ah, Morse, come in, please. Sit down. Chief Inspector Dawson has some observations about Charlie's death, which I think we ought to discuss.
Oh? Well, so long as it's borne in mind that I'm in charge of the investigation.
Let's not allow personal feelings to influence our judgment, Morse. Chief Inspector.
My point is simple enough. The missing chapter from Charlie's book points to a connection between his death and the killing of Mary Lapsley.
I agree. The connection is Frederick Redpath.
Why would he go back the following day, Morse? It's irrational.
Murder is irrational, and murderers.
If Charlie's killer and the killer of Mary Lapsley are one and the same person, he could have read about the book, as Redpath did, and feared what it might contain, something that might jog a memory, something not made public at the time, and which might point to him as the killer. Anything.
With all due respect, sir, everything he says can apply to Redpath. Good God, man, you had him in for the Lapsley killing.
Frederick Redpath did not kill Mary Lapsley. If he had, I would have proved it.
That is perhaps the most arrogant statement I've ever heard from a policeman.
Morse. You don't think the murderer could have been someone other than Redpath, and that he could also be the Lapsley killer?
It's possible, yes, sir, but let's eliminate Redpath first, before we open an 18-year-old case. And what about Majors? He certainly had a motive, and he'll say nothing of his whereabouts at the time of the killing.
That doesn't surprise me.
Why?
Charlie had me look him over when he hired him. He had an involvement with a married woman. She's a prominent artist, a devout Catholic, refuses to divorce her husband. You will probably find he was with her at the time.
So, if you've no fundamental objections, Morse?
Not objections, sir. Reservations. There was an entire force on that investigation. Every lead was checked and double-checked.
Except one. There was an extract from a diary, supposedly from the killer.
It was dismissed as the work of a crank, and by Charlie Hillian, as I recall.
That's right, and on good grounds.
Well, then.
Chief Inspector Dawson tells me he has some doubts about the diary, Morse. And as we've one of our own men in the morgue, I think we should examine every possibility. I'm having copies made for yourself and Sergeant Lewis. So, we can meet here tomorrow morning.
One sheet of paper, 502 words, posted in Reading, June 20th, 1978. It arrived here 2 days later. 502 words, yet 3 different typewriters were used, one of which was not even on the market at the time of the killing. So what can we conclude from that, assuming it's genuine?
Written at the time of the killing, typed up later to protect the killer's identity.
I am the killer of Mary Lapsley. May God forgive me, for soon I shall be no more. Suicide or terminal illness. Why bother to conceal his identity? He says little about the killing. He mostly goes on about how he's feeling, but look at this. In the hut, I didn't want to hurt her. She got frightened and started screaming. Briar's knife came into my hand, and I stabbed her. Now look at the line. The police came today. They found her last night.
I found her the night she was killed.
Yes. So he did. So, he's given us a chronology, an important one. We didn't connect the knife to Briar's until 2 days after the killing.
So how did the killer know it was Briar's knife at the time of the murder?
Yes. If it's a fraud, it's no problem. He could have read about it, heard some gossip, even guessed it. But he goes on. I think it was all right, though. Nothing was said. Who said nothing? Let's go back a bit. There was blood on her nice, clean dress, and some of it was on me. I think they believed me, though. I think they believed me, though. Nothing was said.
Someone knew.
Someone always knows.
This was dismissed as a fraud, so why?
The time span, 5 years after the killing, but more importantly, the reference to Mary's nice, clean dress. 3 witnesses who saw Mary before she died all said that her dress had been very dirty from the day's play.
It was.
So why bother with it now?
This killer was confused. He just committed a murder. He didn't even notice he had blood on his own clothes until later. It's just possibilities, of course.
All the same, I think we should take a look.
Look where, sir? Where do we start?
Well, that's for you to decide, Morse. You're in charge of the investigation. And I'm sure Chief Inspector Dawson will give you every assistance.
Where do we start, sir?
How the hell should I know?
Hang on a minute. I'm as unhappy as you are about being bounced along this road. We've got to start somewhere, sir.
Yes, you're right. I'm sorry. What do you make of it, Lewis?
Well, I think it's a fraud, sir. I mean, why kill someone, write about it in a diary, keep it for 5 years, and then send it to the police?
Why, indeed. Still, we better go through the motions. With Redpath in hospital, we don't be twiddling our thumbs anyway.
Right, sir.
If it was genuine, we'd want to find out who knew about the knife, wouldn't we?
Absolutely.
I'll look at that. The mother was dead, remember, and the girl lived with her grandmother. See if you can trace her, if she's still alive.
I suppose Dawson could help us, eh?
No, we'll do it ourselves, Lewis. The family lived in Fern Street. You can start there.
Small world, sir.
What?
Fern Street. That's where Mitchell lives. The fellow that's building the fence for Hillian.
Really? You'll know the way, then.
Inspector?
Miss Redpath, good of you to come. What will you have?
Oh, nothing, thanks. It's a bit early. So, what can I do for you, Inspector?
Has your father ever talked to you about Mary's murder?
1,000 times. He was always looking for something that would prove his innocence.
Can I help at all?
Yeah, I'm trying to trace a Mrs. Lapsley. She used to live on this street.
Mrs. Lapsley used to live here. She's in a nursing home now, though.
The knife that killed Mary. Your father said he lost it about a year before. Who could have known it was his?
Any number of a dozen people. Anglers at the lake often borrowed each other's equipment. Although, well, on the day he lost it, he went back to look for it, and he saw 2 people he knew there, across the lake. He waved, they waved back.
Who?
John Mitchell and his son Terence.
Did he tell the police this?
Of course, but the Mitchells couldn't remember the incident.
The Mitchells. Can you tell me about them?
Thanks again.
You're welcome. You should have let him in, Mother.
We can't keep them out forever.